The Valori had lived in peace for 3,000 years. They were a gentle people with soft blue skin and large dark eyes. They built beautiful cities on 12 different worlds. They wrote poetry and made music and studied the stars. They had forgotten what war felt like. Then the Krath came. The Krath were insects the size of bears. They had hard black shells and sharp claws and eyes that showed no mercy. They traveled from world to world, taking everything and leaving nothing behind. They had destroyed 37 civilizations before they found the Valori. The first Valori world fell in 3 days. The Krath ships came out of the darkness like a swarm of locusts. The Valori had no weapons to fight back. They had no soldiers to defend their homes. They could only run and hide and die. High Counselor Tivan watched the reports come in from his command center on the homeworld of Talath. He was old, even by Valori standards. His blue skin had faded to silver, and his hands shook when he held things. He had led his people through times of plenty and times of hardship. But he had never faced anything like this. How many? He asked his aide. 14 million dead on Valori Prime, Counselor. The other 3 colony worlds report similar losses. The Krath are moving toward us. They will reach Talath within 6 months. Tivan closed his eyes. His people had no army. They had no warships. They had spent 3,000 years believing that the universe was a peaceful place. They had been wrong. There must be something we can do, he said. His aide hesitated. There is one option, Counselor. We could send a distress signal into the unexplored regions of space. Perhaps someone will hear it. Perhaps someone will come, and if no one comes, then we are no worse than we are now. Tivan nodded slowly. It was a desperate plan, but desperate times called for desperate measures. He gave the order, and the signal went out into the void. The message traveled for weeks through the cold emptiness between stars. It passed dead worlds and empty systems and places where no living thing had ever been. Finally, it reached a small blue planet orbiting an ordinary yellow star. The beings who lived there called it Earth. Admiral Danny Cole was eating breakfast when he got the call. He was a tall man with gray hair and tired eyes. He had spent 30 years in the military. He had fought in wars on Earth before humans learned to travel between stars. He had seen things that still gave him nightmares. But he had also seen the best of humanity. He had seen ordinary people do extraordinary things when it mattered most. Sir, you need to see this, said the voice on his communicator. Danny put down his coffee and walked to the command center of Earth's orbital defense station. His executive officer, Commander Lisa Grant, was waiting for him. She was younger than Danny, with sharp eyes and a sharper mind. She handed him a datapad. We picked this up about 2 hours ago, she said. It's a distress signal from outside our explored space, about 400 light-years away. Danny read the translated message. It spoke of a peaceful people facing destruction. It begged for help from anyone who could hear. It promised nothing in return except gratitude. Is this real? Danny asked. We believe so, sir. The signal patterns are consistent with genuine distress. The coordinates check out. There's a star system there, and our long-range sensors detect signs of conflict. Danny read the message again. 400 light-years was a long way. Even with their fastest ships, it would take weeks to get there. They knew nothing about these Valori or the Krath. It could be a trap. It could be a waste of resources. It could get a lot of good people killed. But Danny kept thinking about the words in the message. We are dying. Please help us. We have nowhere else to turn. Call a meeting, he said. Get me Captain Tony Marsh, Lieutenant Commander Kevin Price, and anyone else with a brain and an opinion. We have a decision to make. The meeting lasted 4 hours. They argued and debated and played out scenarios on holographic displays. Tony Marsh, commander of the assault carrier Endeavour, spoke against the mission. "We don't know these people," he said. "We don't know what we're walking into. For all we know, the Valori are the bad guys, and the Krath are just defending themselves." Kevin Price, the young tactical officer, shook his head. "The signal doesn't read like that, sir. This is genuine fear. These people are terrified." "Fear doesn't make someone innocent," Tony replied. Lisa Grant leaned forward. "No, but it makes them desperate. And desperate people don't usually lie about being desperate." Danny listened to all of them. He valued their opinions. He had surrounded himself with smart people precisely so they would challenge his thinking. But in the end, the decision was his. "Here's what I keep coming back to," he said finally. "If this is real, if these people are really dying out there, and we do nothing, we have to live with that. We have to look in the mirror every day, knowing that we could have helped and chose not to." He stood up and walked to the window. Outside, Earth hung in the darkness like a blue jewel. His home. His responsibility. "I didn't join the military to protect only my own people," he said. "I joined because I believe in something bigger. I believe that when someone asks for help, and you have the power to give it, you should. That's what makes us human." He turned back to face his officers. "I'm taking this to the Defense Council. I'm going to recommend that we answer this call. If they approve it, I want volunteers only. No one gets ordered on this mission. But I'm going, and I hope some of you will come with me." The room was quiet for a long moment. Then Lisa Grant stood up. "I'm in, sir." Kevin Price nodded. "Me too." One by one, every officer in the room stood. Even Tony Marsh, despite his doubts. Danny felt something warm in his chest. Pride, maybe? Or hope. "Then let's go save some people," he said. The Defense Council approved the mission 3 days later. They called it Operation Lighthouse. It would be the largest fleet humanity had ever sent beyond their own solar system. And somewhere, 400 light years away, the Valori waited and prayed that someone would answer their call. The news spread across Earth like wildfire. For the first time in history, humanity would send a fleet to help an alien civilization. Some people cheered. Some people protested. But most people simply watched and waited, wondering what would happen next. Admiral Danny Cole stood in the massive shipyard orbiting Mars. Around him, workers rushed to prepare the fleet. Sparks flew from welding torches. Engineers shouted orders. Cargo ships moved back and forth, carrying supplies and weapons and everything else. An army needed to fight a war far from home. Danny had been given 47 warships. It was more than he had asked for and less than he wanted. The fleet included the newest Titan-class dreadnoughts, massive vessels half a mile long with enough firepower to crack a small moon. There were also frigates, destroyers, cruisers, and the pride of the fleet, the assault carrier Endeavour. Captain Tony Marsh walked up beside him. Tony was in his late 40s, with a thick beard and hands that had seen hard work. He had commanded the Endeavour for 5 years. He knew every inch of that ship. "She's ready, Admiral," Tony said. "My crew is the best in the fleet. Whatever we find out there, we'll handle it." Danny nodded. "I know you will. How are the fighter pilots?" "Eager. Maybe too eager. Lieutenant Maria Santos has been running her squadron through drills every day. They're calling themselves Eagle Squadron now." Danny smiled slightly. Pilots always loved their nicknames. "Good. We'll need them." Elsewhere on the station, Lieutenant Commander Kevin Price was giving a briefing to the command staff. He had spent 3 weeks studying everything they knew about the Valori and the Krath. It wasn't much, but it was enough to paint a picture. The Valori evolved on a garden world, Kevin explained, pointing to images on the display. Stable climate. No predators. Abundant food. They never had to fight for survival. so they never develop the instincts for it. Their bodies are fragile by our standards. An average Valori can lift maybe 20 pounds without straining themselves. He changed the image to show the Krath. The room grew quiet. The Krath are different. They evolved on a harsher world. They're built for combat. Hard shells, sharp claws, strong jaws. They're about twice as strong as a Valori. And how do they compare to us? Asked Commander Lisa Grant. Kevin allowed himself a small smile. That's where it gets interesting. Earth is what xenobiologists call a Class 4 death world. Our planet has extreme temperatures, violent weather, dangerous predators, deadly diseases, and a gravity that would crush most species in the galaxy. He pulled up a comparison chart. We evolved to survive all of that. Our bones are dense. Our muscles are strong. Our immune systems are aggressive. We can heal from injuries that would kill other species. We can survive temperatures that would freeze them or cook them. We can run for hours without stopping. We can take pain that would send them into shock. He looked around the room. The Krath think they're tough because they've been beating up weak species for centuries. They have never fought anything like us. Preliminary estimates suggest that an average human is roughly 2.5 times stronger than an average Krath. And we're faster. And we're smarter. And we're meaner when we need to be. Lisa raised an eyebrow. You sound almost excited about this. Not excited, ma'am, Kevin said. Just aware of our advantages. The Krath have numbers and experience. But we have something they've never encountered before. We have the survival instincts of a death world species. The briefing ended, and the officers returned to their duties. But Kevin's words stayed with them. They had always known that Earth was a harsh world. They had never really understood what that meant until now. On the Endeavor, Lieutenant Maria Santos was running one last drill with Eagle Squadron. Maria was 26 years old, born in a small town in Arizona. She had wanted to fly since she was 5 years old, when her father took her to an air show, and she watched the jets dance across the sky like metal birds. Now she flew spacecraft that could cross solar systems. But the feeling was the same. The freedom, the speed, the pure joy of moving through 3 dimensions with nothing but her skill and her instincts. Eagle 3. You're drifting left, she said into her headset. Sorry. Lead. Correcting now. That was Ensign Chris Blake, her wingman. He was young and sometimes careless, but he had natural talent. Maria was determined to turn that talent into skill. Again, she ordered. From the top. And this time, pretend the targets are actually shooting back. They ran the drill 5 more times until Maria was satisfied. Then she dismissed them to get some rest. They would need a dot in the medical bay of the USS Relentless. Admiral Cole's flagship, Dr. Amanda Hughes, was checking her supplies one final time. Amanda was 42 years old, with steady hands and a calm voice. She had worked in war zones on Earth before joining the fleet. She had seen what weapons did to human bodies. She had no illusions about what was coming. Do we have enough? Asked her assistant, a young medic named Sam Taylor. Enough to start, Amanda said. Never enough to finish. That's the thing about war. There's always more wounded than you expect. Sam looked nervous. He was fresh out of medical school. This would be his first real combat deployment. What's it like? He asked quietly. When the fighting starts. Amanda paused. She thought about all the things she could say. About the noise and the chaos and the smell of blood. About holding someone's hand while they died. About working for 30 hours straight because the wounded kept coming and you couldn't stop. It's hard, she said finally. But you'll find strength you didn't know you had. Just focus on the patient in front of you. One at a time. That's all any of us can do. The day of departure came on a cold November morning. Families gathered at the orbital stations to say goodbye. Mothers hugged their sons. Fathers shook hands with their daughters. Lovers held each other tight and promised to come home. Admiral Cole stood on the bridge of the Relentless and watched the other ships form up around him. 47 warships, 12 support vessels, over 60,000 men and women. All of them volunteers. All of them willing to risk their lives for strangers they had never met. "All ships report ready, Admiral," Lisa said. Danny took a deep breath. This was it. The moment everything changed. "Signal the fleet," he said. "Operation Lighthouse is go. Set course for the Talith system. Maximum speed." One by one, the ships engaged their faster-than-light drives. They stretched and blurred and then vanished, leaving nothing behind but empty space and the hopes of billions. The Armada was on its way. 6 weeks in faster-than-light travel felt like 6 months. The human fleet crossed 400 light-years of empty space, passing dead stars and lonely planets where no life had ever taken root. The crew trained every day. They ran drills and simulations and prepared themselves for whatever waited at the end of their journey. Admiral Danny Cole spent most of his time on the bridge or in his quarters, studying everything they knew about the craft. He barely slept. When he did sleep, he dreamed of failure, of arriving too late, of finding nothing but ashes and bones. "You need to rest, sir," Lisa Grant told him one night. She had found him in the observation deck, staring at the strange light of compressed space. "I'll rest when this is over," Danny replied. "With respect, sir, you'll be useless if you collapse from exhaustion before we even get there." Danny almost smiled. Lisa was one of the few people who could talk to him like that. It was why he valued her so much. "Tell me something, Lisa. Do you think we're doing the right thing?" She thought about it before answering. "I think we're doing the only thing. Someone asked for help. We're the ones who showed up. Whatever happens next, at least we tried." Danny nodded slowly. "That's what I keep telling myself." When the fleet finally dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Talith system, they found exactly what they feared. The craft were already there. "Contact!" shouted the sensor officer. "Multiple contacts." "I'm counting." 300-plus enemy vessels in a defensive formation around the 4th planet. Danny's jaw tightened. 300 ships. They were outnumbered more than 6 to 1. "What about the Valori?" he asked. "I'm detecting one orbital station still active. Life signs are weak but present. The planet below shows signs of recent bombardment, but there are still population centers intact." "They're not dead yet," Lisa said. "No, not yet." Danny straightened his shoulders. "Open a channel to the orbital station. Let them know we're here." On the Valori station, Counselor Tivan had given up hope. The craft had surrounded his world. Their ships blocked out the stars. In 2 days, maybe 3, they would launch their final assault. Everything his people had built over 3,000 years would be destroyed. He was composing his farewell message to the survivors on the surface when his aide burst into the room. "Counselor, ships, unknown ships have entered the system." Tivan rushed to the command center. On the display, he saw them. 47 vessels, strange and blocky and unlike anything in the Valori database. They were small compared to the craft fleet. Hopelessly outnumbered. Then the lead ship broadcast on an open channel. "This is Admiral Danny Cole of the United Earth Defense Fleet. We received your distress signal. We are here to help." Tivan's translator struggled with some of the words. The language was rough and harsh, full of hard sounds. But the meaning was clear. Someone had answered. Someone had come. "You came," he whispered. His eyes filled with tears. "You actually came." His aide looked worried. "Counselor, there are only 47 of them." The Krath have over 300 ships. How can they possibly help us? Tavan shook his head. I don't know. But they crossed 400 light years to be here. They must believe they can do something. He opened a return channel. Admiral Cole, this is High Counselor Tavan of the Valori Confederacy. We are grateful beyond words for your arrival. But I must warn you, the enemy forces are vast. We cannot ask you to sacrifice yourselves for us. There was a pause. Then the human voice came back, calm and steady. Counselor, we didn't come all this way to turn around. How many of your people are still alive? Perhaps 2 billion on the surface. Another 50,000 on this station. Then we have 2 billion reasons to fight. Stand by. We're going to clear you some space. On the Krath flagship, Commander Vokrith watched the newcomers with his compound eyes. He was the largest Krath in the fleet, covered in battle scars from 100 conquests. He had personally destroyed 16 civilizations. The Valori were supposed to be his 17th. What of those ships? He demanded. His sensor officer clicked nervously. Unknown, Commander. They do not match any species in our database. They appear to be from beyond our explored territory. Their numbers are pathetic. 47 against 300. They must be foolish or insane. Perhaps they do not understand our strength, Commander. Vokrith made a sound that might have been laughter. Then we will teach them. Signal the forward squadrons. Intercept and destroy. 50 crash ships broke formation and moved toward the human fleet. They were confident. They had crushed larger forces before. These strange newcomers would be no different. On the Relentless, Kevin Price watched the approaching ships on his tactical display. 50 contacts breaking off from the main fleet. Intercept course. They'll reach weapons range in 12 minutes. Danny studied the display. 50 against 47. Much better odds than the full 300. They're testing us, he said. They want to see what we can do before committing their main force. Then let's give them a show, said Tony Marsh over the fleet channel. Endeavor standing by. Danny nodded to himself. This was the moment. Everything they had prepared for. Everything they had trained for. All ships, this is Admiral Cole. The enemy is coming to meet us. They think they know what war looks like. They think they've seen everything. They're wrong. He paused, looking around at his bridge crew. Men and women who had left their homes and families to help strangers they had never met. Today, we show them what Death Worlders are made of. All ships, battle stations. Weapons free on my command. The two fleets closed on each other. The Krath expected fear. They expected hesitation. They expected their enemies to break and run like every other species they had encountered. Instead, the human fleet accelerated straight toward them. Vokrith watched in confusion. What are they doing? Why aren't they retreating? His officers had no answer. On the Relentless, Danny Cole watched the range counter tick down. 10,000 kilometers. 9,000. 8. Steady, he said softly. 7,000. 6. 5. Admiral? Lisa's voice was tight with anticipation. 4,000. 3. The Krath ships filled the view screen. Dark and angular and bristling with weapons. 2,000. All ships, Danny said. Fire. The darkness of space lit up like a sun being born. The first wave of Krath ships never knew what hit them. Human railguns fired metal slugs at incredible speeds. The slugs punched through Krath armor like needles through paper. Particle beams carved burning lines across enemy hulls. Missiles found their targets with perfect accuracy. In the first 30 seconds. 12 Krath ships became clouds of debris. Commander Vokrith stared at his display in disbelief. His forward squadron was being torn apart. These newcomers fought with a ferocity he had never seen. They didn't wait for the enemy to come to them. They charged straight in, weapons blazing. Reinforce the forward line, he ordered. Send 50 more ships? But Admiral Danny Cole had expected this. The moment the craft reinforcements began to move, he gave his next order. Endeavor, launch all fighters. Eagle Squadron, you cleared to engage. The assault carrier Endeavor opened its massive hangar doors. Hundreds of small craft poured out like angry hornets from a nest. At the front was Lieutenant Maria Santos in her fighter, Eagle 1. Eagle Squadron, stay tight and follow my lead, she said. We're going straight down their throats. Copy that lead, said Chris Blake from her wing. His voice was calm, but she could hear the excitement underneath. The human fighters dove into the craft formation. They moved in ways that should have been impossible. They turned at angles that would have killed pilots of weaker species. The forces they pulled would have crushed Valori bones and left craft warriors unconscious. But humans were different. Humans came from a world where gravity was strong and danger was everywhere. Their bodies could handle stress that other species could not imagine. Maria locked onto a craft fighter and squeezed her trigger. The enemy craft exploded. She was already moving to the next target before the debris finished spreading. Eagle 3, 2 on your tail. Chris threw his fighter into a spiral, pulling so hard that his vision went gray at the edges. But he kept control. He came out behind his pursuers and destroyed them both with precise shots. Thanks for the warning, lead. Returning to formation. On the Relentless, Admiral Cole watched the battle unfold. His fleet was holding. More than holding. They were winning. But he knew this was only the beginning. The main craft fleet is moving, sir, Kevin Price reported. They're committing everything. Danny had expected this too. The craft commander would throw his entire force at them now. 300 ships against 47. The math was not good. All ships, fall back to defensive formation Omega. We make them come to us now. The human fleet pulled back, tightening into a protective sphere. The craft came after them. Hundreds of angular black ships moving like a wave of darkness. The battle became a storm of fire and metal. Ships exploded on both sides. The Relentless shook as enemy weapons found their mark. Alarms blared. Damage reports flooded in. Hull breach on Deck 7. Someone shouted. Fire in Engine Room 3. We've lost contact with the destroyer Vigilant. Danny absorbed it all. He gave orders in a steady voice, moving ships like pieces on a chessboard. He couldn't afford to think about the people dying. Not yet. Right now, he had to win Dot in the medical bay of the Relentless. Dr. Amanda Hughes was fighting her own battle. The wounded arrived in a steady stream. Burns and broken bones and worse. She moved from patient to patient, making impossible choices about who to save first. This one needs surgery now, she told Sam Taylor, pointing to a young woman with shrapnel wounds. Prep the operating table. But the other patients will have to wait. She dies in 10 minutes if I don't operate. The others have more time. Go. Sam went. Amanda scrubbed it in and began cutting. Around her, the ship shook with impacts. Lights flickered. But her hands stayed steady. She had done this before in worse conditions. She would do it again. On the craft flagship, Vokrith was growing desperate. He had lost over 100 ships already. The humans would not break. Every time he thought he had them cornered, they fought their way out. They took terrible damage and kept firing. They lost ships and kept advancing. What are these creatures? He demanded. Why won't they die? His officers had no answers. The craft had conquered species across the galaxy. They had seen warriors and cowards and everything in between. But they had never seen anything like this. These humans fought like every battle was personal. They attacked with a fury that seemed almost insane. What Vokrith did not understand was simple. The humans were not fighting for territory or resources or glory. They were fighting for people they had never met, for strangers who had called out for help across the void of space. And that made them more dangerous than any enemy the Krath had ever faced. By hour 6 of the battle, the Krath had lost half their fleet. By hour 8, they had lost 2/3. Vokrith realized with growing horror that he was losing. "Signal retreat," he ordered finally. "All ships withdraw." The Krath began to pull back. The human fleet, battered but unbroken, did not pursue. They had achieved their goal. The enemy was leaving. On the bridge of the relentless, Danny Cole allowed himself to breathe. His ship was damaged. His fleet was hurt. But they had won. "Casualty reports coming in, Admiral," Lisa said quietly. Her voice was heavy. "How bad?" "We lost 8 ships. Over 2,000 dead. Thousands more wounded." Danny closed his eyes. 2,000 people who had followed him here. 2,000 families who would get the worst news of their lives. He would carry their names forever. But he opened his eyes and looked at the view screen. Below them, the Valori homeworld still turned. 2 billion people still lived. The orbital station still held 50,000 more. The Valori? He asked. "Safe, sir. The Krath are in full retreat. They're leaving the system." Safe. Such a small word for such a big thing. Danny walked to the communications console. He opened a channel to the Valori station. "Counselor Tivan, this is Admiral Cole. The enemy is retreating. Your world is secure." There was a long pause. When Tivan's voice came back, it was thick with emotion. "Admiral, we do not have words. What you have done? Your people have given their lives for ours. We are strangers to you. We have nothing to offer in return. Why? Why would you sacrifice so much for us?" Danny thought about the question. He thought about the 2,000 people who would never go home. He thought about their families waiting back on Earth. "Because you needed help," he said simply. "And we could give it. Where we come from, that's what matters." The Krath never returned to Valori space. They had learned a lesson they would never forget. Somewhere in the galaxy, there were beings who came from a world of fire and storms and constant danger. Beings who had been forged by their planet into something terrifying. The Deathworlders had arrived, and they would not be ignored. 3 days after the battle, Admiral Danny Cole set foot on Valori soil for the first time. He rode a shuttle down through clouds of purple and gold, watching alien forests and silver cities pass beneath him. It was beautiful. More beautiful than he had imagined. High Counselor Tavan waited for him at the landing pad. The old Valori stood with a group of his advisors, all of them dressed in flowing robes of pale blue. They looked small and fragile compared to the human delegation, but their eyes held a depth of gratitude that words could not express. Danny stepped off the shuttle. He was wearing his dress uniform, medals pinned to his chest, but he felt uncomfortable in the formal clothes. He was a soldier, not a diplomat. He never knew what to say at times like this. Tavan approached him slowly. The Valori's silver-blue skin caught the light of their distant sun. His large, dark eyes studied Danny's face, searching for something. "Admiral Cole," Tavan said. His voice trembled slightly. "We prepared many ceremonies, many speeches, many ways to thank you for what you have done." He paused and shook his head. "But now that you are here, I find that none of them seem enough. Your people crossed the stars to save ours. Your people died for ours. How do we thank you for that?" Danny was quiet for a moment. He thought about all the things he could say, about duty and honor and the bonds between civilizations. But in the end, he kept it simple. "You asked for help," he said. "We came. That's all there is to it." He extended his hand in the human gesture of greeting. Tavan looked at the hand with confusion for a moment. Then one of his aides whispered an explanation. The counselor reached out and took Danny's hand in his own. The Valori's grip was light, almost weightless. Danny could feel how fragile those bones were. He could have crushed them without effort. Instead, he held them gently. "I'm sorry we couldn't get here sooner," Danny said. Tiven's eyes glistened. "You came. That is what matters." In the weeks that followed, more human ships arrived. Not warships this time, but transport vessels carrying food and medicine and building materials. Engineers came to help repair the damage from the Krath attacks. Doctors came to treat the wounded. Scientists came to share knowledge. Dr. Amanda Hughes set up a field hospital in one of the damaged cities. She worked alongside Valori healers, teaching them human medical techniques while learning about their own. The Valori were fascinated by human biology. They had never encountered a species so resilient. "Your bodies heal so quickly," one healer told her. "Injuries that would cripple us for months, you recover from in weeks." "How is this possible?" Amanda smiled. "We evolved on a dangerous world. If we couldn't heal fast, we didn't survive." Lieutenant Maria Santos and her pilots became celebrities among the young Valori. The alien children followed them around, staring with wide eyes at the beings who had fallen from the sky and driven away the monsters. Maria found herself teaching them about Earth, about airplanes and mountains and oceans. "Your world sounds frightening," one young Valori said. "Storms that destroy cities. Animals that hunt and kill. How do you live there?" Maria laughed. "We don't just live there. We love it. It's home." Counselor Devon spent many hours with Admiral Cole, learning about humanity. He was amazed by their history. A species that had spent most of its existence fighting wars against itself had somehow become the saviors of another world. "Your people are full of contradictions," Devon observed one evening. They were sitting in his private garden, watching the stars come out. "We are," Danny agreed. "We can be cruel and violent and selfish, but we can also be kind and brave and generous. Sometimes the same person can be all of those things. And yet you came all this way to help strangers." Danny was silent for a moment. He thought about the people he had lost, about the families back home who were mourning. "We came because it was the right thing to do," he said finally. "And because, I don't know, maybe because we know what it's like to feel alone and afraid. We've been there. We didn't want anyone else to go through that if we could stop it." 6 months after the battle, Ambassador Nicole Webb arrived to formalize relations between Earth and the Valori Confederacy. She was a career diplomat, skilled with words and treaties. But even she was moved by the reception they received. Everywhere she went, Valori stopped to bow or wave or simply stare at the human visitors. Children wore pins with the image of Earth on them. Schools taught lessons about humanity and their distant blue world. A holiday had been declared on the anniversary of the fleet's arrival. "They call you their guardians," Nicole reported back to Earth. "They've started teaching their children about humanity, about the day you came. Some of them have started a new religion around it. They believe you were sent by the universe itself." The alliance that formed in the months that followed would grow larger than anyone expected. Other species heard what the humans had done. Some were grateful and wanted to stand with such brave allies. Others were practical and wanted the protection of Deathworld warriors. Still others were simply curious about these strange beings from Earth. Within 5 years, the alliance included 20 different species. Trade routes opened between stars that had never known each other existed. Knowledge flowed in all directions. The galaxy was changing, and humanity was at the center of it. Admiral Danny Cole retired from active duty 5 years after the Battle of Talath. He had given enough to the service. Now it was time to rest. He returned to Earth and bought a small house near the ocean. He liked to sit on his porch in the evenings and watch the waves and think about everything that had happened. Sometimes he dreamed of the battle, of the fire and chaos and the friends he had lost. But mostly, he dreamed of the Valori, of the look in Tivan's eyes when they first shook hands, of the children who had stared at him like he was something magical. Visitors came sometimes, Valori diplomats and scholars who wanted to meet the hero of Talith. Danny always welcomed them. He served them tea and answered their questions and listened to their stories. One evening, a young Valori asked him the question that Tivan had asked years before. "Why did you come?" "You risked everything for people you had never met. People who could give you nothing in return." "Why?" Danny looked out at the ocean. The sun was setting, painting the water in shades of gold and red. "Because the universe is dark," he said, "and cold, and full of things that want to hurt us. But it doesn't have to be that way. Sometimes all it takes is for someone to reach out, to say, 'You're not alone. I'm here. I'll help.'" He smiled, the wrinkles around his eyes deepening. "We came because we wanted to be a light in the darkness. And because we hope that someday, if we're the ones calling for help, someone will come for us too." The young Valori did not fully understand, but he felt the truth in the words. And that was enough. Far away, across 400 light-years of space, the Valori homeworld turned peacefully around its star. Children played in silver cities. Poets wrote new songs. Scientists looked up at the sky and dreamed of what lay beyond. And in their stories and their songs and their memories, they never forgot the day the Deathworlders arrived, not as conquerors, not as enemies, but as friends.